right, we're back with the Preacher and the Prodigy podcast, everybody. It is season 4. We finally made it to recording season. We're back. We're ready to go. We're so hyped for the season. It's gonna be a great
But
one.
so much has changed
A
since
lot, a
the
lot has
end of
changed.
season 3.
We're gonna get to that.
Matt Weiss is out.
Yeah, a lot of off-season craziness going on, including our family. It's just been a crazy transition from third year to fourth year. For
We
this
have moved
podcast,
from Hawkeye Land to
Badgerland.
Badgerland. We're coming for the first ever outdoor podcast of the Preacher and the Prodigy. While we await
Well,
the completion. Well, we did have
we
the
did
brief,
one at
at the Diva Loy Stadium.
we did have one at Northwestern halftime. That was a
Yes,
good one.
with cousin Jacob. But
Mhm.
we are outdoors as we await the completion of our brand new Preaching the Prodigy recording studios, our
Like,
AT&T
excited for
recording
that.
studios,
Excited for that.
and we hope to be there by early season, for sure mid-season, have everything ready to go.
Yep.
But a lot has changed.
hmm
We are now residents of the state of Wisconsin, having moved careers, but we're ready to
Cheeseheads.
start. Yeah, we're cheeseheads unofficially.
We're we're trying to figure out the best place to do this in the situation that we have. We have to wait to move into our house,
Yep.
and right now we're just trying to make the best of it and get the
So
show
we
on the
are
road.
outdoors on a beautiful August evening, ready to kick off season 4, the 2023 college football season. It's going to be a good season.
Yeah.
We're
Mike-
excited, a lot of things, and we thought for this opening podcast we would just dig in with the biggest off-season story,
Realignment.
Brett Bielema's search for the perfect super nachos. We're going to spend an hour talking
All right,
about Brett
I'm
Bielema.
down. Let's do it. We're gonna talk about it's basically just took over college sports, especially this off season. Realignment has completely I don't know, destroyed
Upended.
rivalries,
Upended.
upended, turned the tables on what we knew college sports to be, which was bus trips, not having to take planes from coast to coast,
Regional rivalries.
just backyard balls.
So let's quick summarize who's moved conferences in this offseason or
So-
committed to moving conferences. 'Cause a lot of these things will be in effect next college football season.
So, Power 5 level, learned that Texas and Oklahoma. Well, we'll start with this year. This
Yeah,
year,
this year.
big
Recent news.
big changes to the Big 12. Cincy, BYU, Houston, and I believe it's UCF will be joining Power 5 conference, be joining the Big 12.
But let's talk not just who will be participating this year, but who has made a decision in the offseason. So we're talking about the Huskies.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to get everybody settled to what's
Okay.
gonna
All right, go ahead.
happen. So
Sorry.
that's gonna change
Ciento.
this year. No, you're good. That's gonna change this year. There have been changes to the American Athletic Conference, boosting up to 14 teams now.
Or as I like to call it, the
Conference. The added 2 teams, I believe. We added 2 teams from the FCS level. So they'll be competing. But bigger SEC, Big Ten. That's what everybody's focused on, and eventually the demise of the Pac-12. We could just start there. The Pac-12 has now 4 teams that are still going to be a member through 2024, 2025.
Wazoo, you got the Beavs.
Yep.
And then you've got Cal and Stanford.
They got Cal and Stanford. And the rest of the schools are joining the Big 12, SEC, or the Big 10. So the Pac-12 is kind of left behind in the dust. Were rumors that Cal and Stanford could go to the ACC. That's not going to happen.
No,
anymore.
Notre Dame wanted them in there, and the powers that be in the ACC said, no, Notre Dame, you're not even a full member. Stop telling us what to do.
Didn't even quite get there.
Go back to South Bend.
Join the Big 10. So yeah, the Big 10 adding probably the top 4 from the Pac-12: Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. Those kind of have been the leaders of the conference for a very long time.
Yep. And then some movement to the Big 12 in Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Really leaving the Pac-12 as an non-viable conference unless something's happened. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what we would do if we were in charge of moving all the schools, all the chess pieces to create, and these were the rules we established, 8 12-team conferences. And so that means that there are 96 teams in our new Division 1A. That means that there are something like 40 teams or 37 teams currently
37
in
teams.
who will be sliced off. So sorry, Northern Illinois Huskies, you're not going to make it. Maybe they made it for you, but what we're going to do in the remainder of this podcast is talk through our proposal for conference realignment. This is not about money. This is not about the TV
It's about
deals.
football.
It's not about cable subscriptions. It's about football. It's about regions. It's about preferences. And we have not seen each other's list. This will be revelation to us as well. And the idea here being that with 8 12-team conferences, 6 team divisions within each of those, you'd have a championship game, and then you would have an 8-team playoff that could go forward as the national championship playoff system. And so we've thought about that. We've taken all those things into consideration, and we've laid out for you our proposal for the best possible realignment. Again, there had to be some trade-offs here. We couldn't take everybody. We had to try to go for balance, but we'll see each other's priorities as we reveal this to one another. Now, we decided we were going to move across your podcast screen from west to east. There's always that southeast bias. We're going to begin in the west, and let's begin with your westernmost conference here, Jericho, your conference of 12. What are you calling it, and who's a participant?
Well, I'll start. It's simply just going to be the Pacific Conference. All the teams in this conference, believe it or not, are bordering the Pacific. All the states that these teams are in are all in the Pacific, so this is going to consist of Oregon, Washington, and California mainly, because it's the biggest. So what I did, I made it north to south. It'd make the most sense because you can't really make it east to west.
Sure.
North, I took the 4 Oregon and Washington schools.
Yep.
And then I took Cal and Stanford from there also.
Interesting.
I thought that it would be, add some competitiveness, academic prowess to the north up there. And then in the south, I added, this is mainly a two-headed race in the south. We had the San Diego State and San Jose State, because they've got stuff down there. And I guess Fresno State have some way back when rivalries to, like Stanford and stuff like that. And then, you got to have Hawaii. Like, come on, people got to make their trips to Hawaii, to Honolulu for their vacations, in October. So we had them in there, and then I put in UCLA and USC to kind of run that division.
Yeah, very, very similar. I called mine the Pacific Coast Conference, and I think my Pacific Coast Conference South is very similar. My Pacific Coast South, I have 5 California schools and then the Rainbow Warriors. So I have Stanford, Cal, USC, UCLA. I also went with the Bulldogs of Fresno State, and then I went Hawaii Rainbows for my Pacific Coast South. And the North, again, similar, but with one significant difference. I have 2 teams from each of 3 states, and you're going to be surprised by this. I have both the Washington and Washington State pair, Oregon and Oregon State, and then I went one state to the east to include the Broncos and the Vandals. I wanted a big potato rivalry between Boise State and Idaho.
The Vandals in there. You took the 9,000 seat Hippie Dome and brought them into the giant Pacific Conference.
Give me all those. Give me all those Idaho teams.
The mountains in Idaho. All right.
So that's our Pacific Coast team. And then I'll go next. Then right next door to them, I have what I call the Rocky Mountain Conference. The Rocky Mountain Conference. And again, I went in some sense north and south here. The north, I have some Colorado schools. I have Colorado State, and then I also went with Air Force. I brought the academy there into the conference. And then Utah, I of course matched then with BYU, and then lasso them up. I went with your Wyoming Cowboys for the Rocky Mountain
That's
North. So then I went south, Rocky Mountain South. Again, a Southwest flavor here. I went with the two Arizona schools, Arizona, Arizona State, and then a couple maybe surprises. I wanted to go West Texas here, so I went with Guns Up, Texas Tech. I went with the Baylor Bears, and then I threw in San Diego State, and then meet the Roadrunners of University of Texas at San. Well, a lot of success in the recent years, and they may have to be relegated back out of the top 96. But I love the Roadrunners being a thorn in the side of some of these big schools. So again, really quickly, Rocky Mountain Conference North, Air Force, Colorado, CSU, Wyoming, Utah, BYU, and the South, Arizona, Arizona State, UTSA, Texas Tech, Baylor, and the Aztecs of San Diego State.
All right, I think that's pretty good. But when I went mountain, this is what I call a conference, the same as you. I really did not. I tried to keep the Texas schools more in their own conference, so some more
So in other words, you lacked
super
imagination.
super real rivalries where it's just the state of Texas going at each other. For the mountain, I also did North and South. I brought in um, Boise State there to add some power at the top, and then I brought in BYU and Utah,
Similar.
and then I took the Nevada rivalry, the
Stop
UNLV
it.
and Nevada
Stop. You brought
rivalry.
the Running Rebels, who might be the worst team in D1.
They have one of the. It's the University of Las Vegas. That is a large college. I'll tell you. That is gonna bring in tons.
I have no respect for this choice.
I brought it in.
You want the gambling money. That's all you want. Keep going.
This is what we do. We pick the spread here. And then the South. I brought in um, Colorado State and Air Force versus Colorado, Arizona State and Arizona, and then of course, how can you forget about the New Mexico State
Yeah,
rivalry?
I completely forgot about them on purpose because they are terrible at football. So that's your
Fun.
choice.
Just
Go
for
for
some
it.
teams to beat up on. It's free bye week.
So that's what did you call the conference? The Rocky Mountain
The
Conference, the
mountain.
Mountain
Yeah.
Conference. All right, sounds good. All right, so we're 1/3 of the way through our realigned college football. Do you want to go next?
I'll go next. We'll do the snake draft style. For next conference, I had a Southwest Conference. This mainly consists of
Whack.
the the SWAC. This consists of pretty much a lot of the Big 12, what it is and was. I brought in Colorado, who's going to be in there now. They have some rivalries from way back. And then I brought in the two Kansas schools, two Oklahoma schools, and Texas Tech, because they're on the northern part of the state of Texas. That's my North Division. And the South Division is just strictly Texas schools: SMU, TAMU, TCU, Texas, Houston, and Baylor.
Wow, interesting.
I'm going hard on Texas for
Yeah,
this.
and yeah, you definitely did, but not as hard as I did. Um,
You know, it's got to be harder than you did. I have 7 Texas schools. You took you took 2 of those and brought them into your mountain conference.
okay, well let's listen to this. So you call this the Southwest Conference?
The
Yeah, all right.
SWAC.
So I called it the Midland Conference, and I went a little different direction. But in um in the Texas portion, I went 5 out of 6 Texas teams. But again, I'm looking for a little bit of balance, and so there's a couple teams that you wouldn't think of as being perennial powers in each one of these divisions. Again, for balance's sake. So the Midland Conference, I have what we call it the South. Probably I have Texas, the Horns. I've got the Aggies of Texas A&M, and then I've got SMU as well. The Cougs of Houston, the Frogs of TCU, and then I went with the Green Wave of Tulane. Just as a little bit of a surprise there. I know there's some New Orleans area, but I wanted a little bit of competitive balance, and you'll see why when I come to my next conference. The northern part of the Midlands, I went Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, natural rivals there. Tulsa, another Oklahoma school, and then I fanned out a little bit there. And you could maybe argue that I should have this team and the other. I have the Rice. Oh,
My goodness.
the Rice Owls, and then the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I want to see a return of the rivalry of Nebraska, and then finally the Missouri Tigers. So I have in that northern part Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Tulsa, Missouri, Rice, and Nebraska, and then in the Texas portion, Texas, Texas A&M, SMU, Tulane, Houston, and TCU. So Tulane and Rice potentially could flip flop.
Okay, Preacher, you're telling me that UNLV was a tough pick from Vegas, but you're gonna go with the smaller school in Houston, the Rice Owls?
The Rice Owls. They have more of a football legacy than Jerry Tarkanian UNLV basketball school does.
It's the smaller of the pair in Houston. Okay.
Small but proud. I'm not talking about size. I'm talking about traditional college football.
And you brought in Tulane, who's gonna just be a.
Are you disrespecting Willie Fritz on the opening season podcast?
Are we talking about the
BCS competitor Tulane Green Wave?
Are we talking about the sustainability of the conference in 2 years or 10 years? Because in 10 years, Tulane is going to go downhill.
Timestamp this. Early 2023, Jericho says Tulane is going downhill. Keep this for a posterity.
You heard me.
Willie?
You heard me.
You know what to do.
In 10
All right,
years, Tulane
let's keep moving. And now let's get into what I call the Mississippi Delta Conference. And now this will start to make a little more sense why I saw the people where they have. I call this the Delta Conference. This is going to be your deep South teams. And so I have two divisions, not really north and south there. You might call them east and west. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't think about this with perfect geography. But the first conference is going to be Alabama, Auburn, the Blazers of UAB, the Tigers of Memphis, the Hogs of Arkansas, and the Trojans of Troy. So I have UAB, Auburn, Alabama, Memphis, Arkansas, Troy. And the other side, again, some more traditional teams, I have LSU, I have Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And then, really, this maybe weakens the division. Three kind of dark horses. I have Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss, and then Louisiana. So that's probably, as you take a 35,000 foot view of this, it might be the most imbalanced division, having LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, along with three of these teams. But these teams have been thorns in the sides of powers through the years. And again, I'm looking for balance and regional competitiveness. No long plane flights. Everybody just takes an Uber and plays a college football.
Okay, well, geographically, that doesn't really make sense. You can't really, cut a slice through it and say that.
All of those teams are from two states, Louisiana and Mississippi.
And Alabama.
Well, that's the other division. That's the other division. The other division is Alabama, Auburn, UAB.
So one of them's the patty of the sandwich. The other two are the buns. That's what you're saying, because Alabama is in the middle, and then you have Louisiana and Mississippi on the other side.
They're in the other division.
Yeah.
I
suppose. That's what I'm saying. Geographically, it doesn't make sense.
Memphis and Arkansas kind of wrapping a little bit north there of some of these teams, but the other teams are from the state of Alabama. So.
All right.
You're right to disagree if you want to be wrong.
Stay in the same area. So I tried to make this about as east as west as you can. Also, west I did have Alabama and Auburn and LSU, and then I also had the Mississippi schools, and then I dumped Troy in there too, because they've been very competitive. Football wise, the last, I don't know, probably the last 5-7 years.
Yeah, 5 to 6 probably.
They've been competitive with teams.
You always see them in on September 17. They're in a game with someone they shouldn't be. They may not win it, but they're in the game with Oklahoma or Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. And then the East, I went kind of really hard on Georgia here. The 4 Georgia schools: Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State. Because Georgia's a big thing right now. A lot of people in Georgia. And then Florida, because they obviously have ties with LSU and Georgia and a little bit of Alabama and stuff like that. And then Tennessee also, because the rivalry between Alabama and Tennessee is still a thing. Georgia and Florida, they've been going at it, and they probably will go at it in the next couple of years with the way this conference is going to look.
Potentially. I'm going to finish with some of those deep southeast schools in a little bit, but All right, so you call that what? What do you call that conference?
Southeast,
The Southeast
Southeast,
Conference. All
SEC.
right, all right. So you heard my Mississippi Delta. I called it. You called it the SEC. All right. So we are halfway down here.
Wow.
Where do you want to go next?
I'll go next. You want to go north a little bit of the
Sure.
Atlantic coast? We'll go to the Atlantic coast. Atlantic Coast Conference. I have it. Split it north and south because it made most sense to me. North, I had a lot of Carolina dumped in there. I had Duke and North Carolina because obvious reasons. NC State also, and Wake Forest. Now those four have really kind of been in tight quarters, football rivalry wise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had East Carolina also because before all the crazy Power Five, Group of Five stuff, they still had rivalries with those schools. And then I put Navy in there because I
Mm,
thought Navy, as
interesting.
a military school, they deserved to be in these conferences and a good one at that. So I put them in the north portion of my Atlantic Coast Conference. South, I had Clemson and South Carolina, again a rivalry. Florida State, Miami, and then I had the UCF and USF schools in there as well, the Bulls and the
Mm-hmm.
Knights,
Mm-hmm.
to add some Florida Florida to the conference and just to have some more rivalries and have some more football
Okay.
competitiveness.
Interesting. All right. I'm gonna go a little different direction. Instead of going northeast, I'm just gonna go north a little bit here, and give you a couple of the conferences I'm most excited about. Um, this one I'm calling, believe it or not, the Naismith Conference. I went with a conference that has a really good
Basketball.
basketball history, but I think could be interesting for football. Again, two divisions here. Um, one of them is the division that includes. We'll have to double check this. Yeah, it includes Duke and North Carolina, like you had. I added to that mix two other schools from North Carolina: Wake Forest and NC State, and then I went Bearcats and Hokies. So UNC, Duke, Wake, NC State, Cincy, and Va Tech. And on the other side of the division, again, aiming for balance here, I went with kind of a mashup. Maybe you'd call this the Ohio River kind of network. Kentucky, Louisville,
Ooh.
Indiana, Purdue, Vandy, Tennessee. So some Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana region there. Again, interesting. All these schools are teams you could definitely see in the Sweet 16 of your March Madness bracket.
I think that's a really interesting conference.
Yeah.
I don't know about football wise how many viewers it's going to draw, but I think that for basketball, if you took these 96 teams, same conferences and everything, put them into men's basketball, that'd draw a lot of viewers.
If Tennessee doesn't come out of that division almost every year, they're doing something wrong. Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisville, Indiana, Purdue, and Vandy. That really needs to be Tennessee's division. They've kind of got the easiest draw if you take a look at it. And then I went with something I call the Midwest Conference. North of there, I have two divisions that feels kind of Big Ten-ish, but not entirely. The Midwest Conference West with Badgers, and when you have the Badgers, you're going to have the Gophers, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Let's go one state over: Iowa, Iowa State, and then just keeping kind of the chain of states going: Kansas, Kansas State. So this is the Midwest West. The Midwest East, then Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois Northwestern, Syracuse, Notre Dame. Probably one of the strongest divisions. No group of five teams really in that particular division. That'd be a tough division, but I like Michigan to win it every year. So my Midwest: Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State. On the other side, Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Northwestern, Syracuse, and Notre Dame.
So we're probably thinking the same thing. Where did the Buckeyes go?
GPAC.
Do you really disrespect
I'm not
State?
done yet.
Are
I'm not
you?
done yet. I'm not done yet.
G-back is like where champions are, Dad.
All
That's
right.
where Morningside and Northwestern come from.
Shoot, I got 2 conferences left, and you've got what, 3 conferences
Three.
left? All right.
So I'll stay the area you went with your what did you call it? Naismith Conference.
They went Naismith.
That
Yeah.
area, that central Appalachian
Yeah.
area. What I did was
The WLIL listening area.
the WLAL listening area. I'm really not proud of this conference because this is kind of my scapegoat conference where I had to just put people in there. So that if this is most definitely going to be my worst conference, I
Okay.
believe. In the East, I had
Marshall.
West Virginia. In the East, I had App State, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, and then maybe a little bit biased. I put Central, Eastern, and Western Michigan. Just a little bit biased to my
Directional
whole state.
schools.
Just a little bit. And then in the West, I had Louisville, Memphis, Mizzou, and Arkansas, and then finished with Vandy and Iowa State.
That's an interesting conference, and really all the powers on that side of your conference versus
Yeah.
the Chippewas.
It's
and,
going to come from one side of the conference, and
Yeah.
Kentucky's kind of lonely on the eastern side of the
Yep.
my Central Conference. But that really just I didn't really have a place for a lot of those teams.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm
This is
gonna
kind of
be-
like your junk drawer
I'm gonna be
conference.
honest.
Your
This is
junk
this
drawer.
is my junk drawer, bottom of the closet, kind of back of the closet kind of thing.
This is when you retired and you just decided to throw these teams in there. All right.
And I'll go same direction you did. I went with also called the Midwest Conference. East and West. West I had Illinois Northwestern from Illinois, Wisconsin Minnesota package deal, and then Iowa Nebraska. Also in my mind, they're a package deal. Nebraska plays Minnesota tough. That area, really Midwest, is tight rivalry wise. And then East, I had Indiana and Purdue from Indiana, Michigan State, and then team down south, and then Notre Dame.
Okay.
So that's gonna be the better side of the conference for sure, I believe.
Interesting.
As is with the normal Big Ten, the East is better than the West almost every year.
Okay. I'll wrap this up with my final 2 conferences, and you're going to put this all into a graphic here for us. So
I'm gonna try.
Going to try. So I went with my final 2 conferences again on the Eastern Seaboard. Start with what I call the Mid Atlantic Conference, and did some similar things to you that you did as well. Mid Atlantic Conference, I include Boston College, the U.S. Naval Academy, Penn State Nittany Lions, the Terps of Maryland, the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, and then the University of Army. The
Army Navy.
Yeah, Army Navy in the same division. And then on the other side of the Mid Atlantics, Pittsburgh. And then there's definitely some recency bias in this. I went with Liberty Flames, the Marshall Thundering Herd, and then their in-state rival,
West
Virginia. And then I went with the Hoos of the University of Virginia, and then Ohio State. If Ohio State does not win this division every single year,
we will be so happy.
But I wanted them to be in there with
happy.
their academic peers, like teams like West Virginia and Marshall. So just so they can keep up, in the Quiz Bowl league or whatever that they have. So the Mid Atlantics would be Boston College, Navy, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, Army. On the other side, Pitt, Liberty, Ohio State, Marshall, Virginia, and West Virginia. The pretty weak division there, to be honest. The one that includes Liberty and the Buckeyes. My final conference I call the Sunshine Conference. Again, so there's going to be a lot of probably the single strongest conference I have. On the southern side, all Ron DeSantis. Central Florida, South Florida, Florida Atlantic, FSU, Florida, and Miami. All Florida schools. No one ever has to cross state lines. The northern part, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina, App State, and the Clears, the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. So my Sunshine Conference, South Central Florida, Florida State, Miami, South Florida, Florida Atlantic. The northern part, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Coastal Carolina, App State, Clemson, South Carolina, and I beg for forgiveness
Shots.
to the Buffalo Bulls for the disrespect of not including them in the top 96.
The mullets. You're riding with the mullets.
Yep.
Good
Sorry.
job, though.
Sorry. So you got one.
I got one
one
conference, same
left.
area.
And then we'll kind of draw us into a close by saying who we think would win each division and then each conference.
Yeah. So Northeast Conference. I had the Northeast and the Southwest Division. Northeast Division, I had Boston College, and then Syracuse, and Maryland and Rutgers, and Army and Marshall. So they're not alone with a Marshall pick or the Army pick.
Nice.
I put them in there. Southwest, Virginia and Virginia Tech, West Virginia. I didn't really like taking Marshall and West Virginia away in different conferences, but kind of had to be that way. And then Pitt and Penn State from the state of Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And then I also went with the Flames of Liberty.
Yeah. Yeah, that might turn out to be a bad pick now that Hugh Freeze is back in the SEC, but we'll see. All right, so we've got our conferences, we've got our 96. There's obviously some omissions there. A lot of directional schools for me did not make it. There's some. Obviously I left out both teams from New Mexico. There's some traditional schools there, but they, just went with teams that have been better recently. Again, maybe you get relegated if you finish at the bottom of each division. Perhaps you get kicked out for a year, and then you get replaced by some teams with some competitive things happening there. Now, let's just go through really quickly as we wrap up here. The winners of each division and each conference. So that this would
be for next year.
No, this would be
like this coming year,
2023. Who would win it if these were all together? And this would essentially be if these conferences were aligned this way, your playoff 18 bracket.
If we'll just say if everybody played in a neutral field, because obviously, Marshall's home game is going to be different than a white.
Well, so the assumption being that you play each of the 5 teams in your division, and maybe you rotate through 3 on the other side.
Yeah,
something like that. So every team has 8 conference games.
8 conference games, 4 non-conference games.
Yep.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right. Pacific North. This one for me boils down between Oregon and Washington. I'm going to take Washington. I think this year they've got a lot of firepower. They've got some defensive linemen who will really cause havoc for those Pac-12 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I really like where Washington is right now, and I think they've got more there than Oregon does right now. Because Oregon, great offensive line last year, lost a lot though. So I'm gonna take Washington for this division.
Okay. And they would match up with whom from in your Pacific Conference?
USC.
Yeah.
For my South of the Pacific Conference right now, USC. Their offense is definitely going to be top 3, top 5 this year. Caleb Williams coming back, got a guy from Arizona, and all that good stuff. Defensively, they hit the transfer portal hard.
Yeah.
Especially on the D line, and return some quarterbacks. I really think that they're going to be a very solid team this year.
I'll go Oregon and USC in mine. I'll take USC to win the Pacific.
Yeah, I'll take USC to win that too.
Rocky Mountain Conference, I'll go next. I'm going to take Utah and let's see, probably Baylor. And I take Utah to win that conference as I presently have it. Sorry, Neon Dion. Give me the Utes to come out of the Rockies.
This year I'm really high on Boise State. I really like Boise State. I think that they would be able to beat Utah in the same conference, neutral field, beat BYU, come out of that North Division. South Division, yeah, really a mess. I'll go Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. Stick with the Sun Devils.
All right.
And yes, I take Boise State to win that.
All right, Mississippi Delta Conference for me. I'm going Bama LSU. Give me Bama. It's not by a lot, but
Well,
I think Bama is, as strange as it sounds, could be a dark horse national championship pick this year. As strange as it sounds, no one's picking Bama to win it, but if they can find something at quarterback, I think Bama is just so well coached.
this is this is really revealing a lot about what's going to come down next week with our overall preview.
Yeah.
Um, Southeast, take Georgia. Georgia tops Tennessee in that division.
Okay.
And I think that LSU is going to come out of the West, especially um, if they can figure out a way to limit injuries.
Yeah.
If they stay at full health, Georgia and LSU championship, I'll take LSU.
Okay.
I think LSU will
Beat
beat
Georgia.
Georgia this
Wow.
year.
Interesting.
SEC championship.
Gutsy pick. My Midland Conference. I haven't thought about this a whole lot. I think in lieu of a lot of evidence to the contrary, I'm going to stick with TCU. Just so well coached by Sonny Dykes. TCU over Oklahoma. TCU obviously got completely shellacked in the national championship game, but they seem to be able to handle Texas pretty well, and so I'm going to go TCU coming out of my Midlands. An admittedly weak conference. Mizzou could do something interesting this year. We'll have to see how that turns out. I don't think Nebraska is going to be much to write home on under Matt Rule in year one.
So Southwest Conference, which is same area again. From the North, I think I would take Oklahoma. They got a lot on offense, and I think Brett Venables will correct what happened 6 and 7 year one. What was that first losing season since a long time ago?
A minute, yeah.
A long time ago. South, I'll take Texas. I think that Texas really has it set up for them this year. And this is going to be the best team Texas has had in a very long time. Maybe since the Vince Young days. And I think that Oklahoma, Texas, Red River Shootout, Texas wins that.
Yeah, Texas has had Oklahoma's number pretty well recently. So my Naismith Conference, I mean Tennessee's going to win it. I don't the other side of the bracket, I really don't know. I think NC State potentially. Don't really know. Obviously, Mac Brown has a great quarterback, but and actually, so did Duke has a good quarterback as well this year. Just give me Tennessee over NC State. Just who knows? The middle of that ACC is always a question. Midwest Conference.
Whoa,
Go ahead.
whoa.
Yep, go ahead.
I gotta go still. We gotta keep this even. Yeah, Atlantic Conference. So on the Atlantic side, North Division. Well, this is gonna reveal a lot. NC State wins that division. South Division, I think Clemson comes out of it winner, over Florida State. And
Yep.
gosh, you put me on the spot. NC State, Clemson, NC State wins it.
Wow, interesting. My Midwest Conference, I think Michigan's going to win this year. I think it would be disappointing if they didn't in both the hypothetical and the real world. The other side, um, I don't know. It depends on how much I believe in Lance Leipold. Turnover, obviously, at Wisconsin. PJ Fleck has not done well with high expectations. Just for fun, I'll say the Jayhawks would win that division. I've seen some really cool things coming out of Lawrence, Kansas. Give me Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Stadium upgrade.
Yep.
Really cool things.
Great coach. One of the best coaches in the country.
Also my Midwest Conference. Gonna come down to it always goes Michigan and the Buckeyes. I think Michigan's gonna have it this year. Try not to say too much of that. West, I think it's going to be Iowa for this year, but in future years, I would tend to choose Wisconsin. And Luke Fickle getting it figured out over Kirk Ferentz.
It's just a guessing game.
Constant in 5, and then Michigan wins that conference over Iowa.
Yep. My Mid-Atlantics, I'm going Penn State, Ohio State. Not going to overthink this at all. I think Maryland's going to have a pretty good team this year. I think they're going to put the scare into a couple of people, obviously getting Talia back. It's just a good system under Mike Loxley, especially in the early part of the season. Questions, are you facing September Maryland or November Maryland? But I'm going to take Penn State and Ohio State to come out of my Mid-Atlantics, and I'll take Ohio State. Depends on where the game's at. This year in the real world, it's in Columbus. It's in the shoe, so I'll take Ohio State, depending on if they find a quarterback.
Yeah,
Next year, I'll take Penn State.
2 conferences left.
You've got 2, and I've got 1.
I got my Central junk drawer conference. This year, I don't really know what to make out of Kentucky. They get Devin Leary and from NC State. Um, I think I'd take them over Cincinnati and App State in that division. And the West, Arkansas is definitely up there. I think I'd take Arkansas. I think they're could be a borderline top 20 team if everything goes right with that running
Just kind of
backfield.
waiting, yeah, for Rocket, what's his name?
Rocket Sanders.
Rocket Sanders to come through there.
We don't like Rocket lots.
Sunshine Conference, all the Florida schools. I'm going to just buy into the Knowles hype a little bit. I like what Norvell has done there, and just really good skill position players all over the field in Tallahassee. And then the Sunshine Conference South, obviously going Georgia Tech. I mean, how can you pick against the Ramblin' Wreck at this point? No, obviously I'm going Coastal Carolina. I'll take Georgia. Right. Florida State and Georgia, I'm going to take Georgia. I'm not going to pick against the Bulldogs at this point, despite questions at quarterback. The recruiting is too deep. The coaching is too just savage. I mean, they'll rip your heart out. So Georgia over Florida State to win the Sunshine Conference. Your final conference is
relentless. Northeast Conference, Northeast Division. Maryland. It does depend whether you're playing them in September or November because they really start to fade out as the year goes on, whether it be injuries or just getting it cold. I don't know, but they are two different teams, beginning of the season to end of the season. But I think Maryland's best team out of what I have here, and Southwest, Penn State again.
Who else is in your division with Maryland that wouldn't beat them? Army, Navy, folks like that. Is that who you have?
Rutgers isn't going to beat them. Boston College, no. Syracuse, no. Marshall, Army, no.
Who knows on Boston College? I think they're really well coached. They just can't seem to win the games. They play good football. Will they break through? It's just hard with that recruiting footprint. I guess I would agree with you. I'd take Maryland.
Last year, they were
terrible.
They were by far
terrible.
They averaged like 60 yards a game running the ball. That's worse than like Mike Leach air raid.
I like the defense that Jeff Hafley and what's the other guy? Defensive Aziz, whatever his name is, good defensive coordinator. But again, offense just they don't have it right now. So
and right now, Penn State would win that conference.
All right,
probably pretty handily.
So would Northwestern. So that brings us to the conclusion of our opening season podcast.
Whoa.
What do you have left?
I have a playoff planned out, okay?
We're going to do that tonight. We're already at 42 minutes.
All right, well, we'll try to make this quick.
Okay.
Playoff planned out for this perfect conference realignment, whatever. The Pacific and Mountain champions would play in the Fiesta Bowl.
No, are they playing each other because of regional, or are you seeding your top teams?
No, they're playing each other because of regional.
I would seed mine.
They could seed. I'm just saying because some of these, the bowls could change on whatever they play, whatever they pay to. Southwest versus Southeast playing the Peach Bowl, and then Atlantic versus Northeast up there. You could put them in some whatever bowl pays the most. Outback, Chick-fil-A, Alamo, whatever. Midwest versus Central, Cotton Bowl, and then the semis. I'd have the Orange and the Sugar Bowl. And then the championship, if weather permits, Lord willing, in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. So I'm going completely different. I'm just going to go seeding mine. I'm gonna have a BCS like committee to rank them. And in a perfect world, this would be a 16-team playoff. And then you'd seed all those teams as well. But we're not there yet. So. All right, so this is the beginning of season 4. Hopefully next time we'll have a little better video quality because the sun won't be setting. But we're on into the season, and we'll be back with probably some national overview, maybe some Heisman predictions coming up next time. Until then, I'm the Preacher.
I'm Prodigy. Peace.